if lying is not bad in your mind, well, you would do it a lot. People who don't have any, moral compass, any virtues that they stick by, any ethical guidelines that they adhere to, well, they just lie. Because why would you not just lie about things? Which is exactly what is going on in Canada. Uh, the tariff talks have been stopped by President Trump. He said, effective immediately, we are going to stop negotiating with Canada on the tariffs side because of a commercial that the Premier of Ontario put out. Now, I'm going to play you the commercial and then give you the context in which they're airing this commercial, what they're trying to do with this commercial, and how the commercial is in of itself misleading and not at all what they think, what they are trying to make it say. But first things first, just watch it. It's a minute long. They're spending, according to President Trump, $75 million to play this commercial on Newsmax, Bloomberg, Fox News, Fox Sports, NBC, CBS, CNBC, ESPN, ABC, and local stations throughout the U.S., according to the CBC. In other words, they're playing this commercial, $75 million commercial, and this is it, and we will discuss the misrepresentation of former President Reagan, who is featured in this video. Check this out.
When someone says, let's impose tariffs on foreign imports, it looks like they're doing the patriotic thing by protecting American products and jobs. And sometimes for a short while it works, but only for a short time. But over the long run, such trade barriers hurt every American worker and consumer. High tariffs inevitably lead to retaliation by foreign countries and the triggering of fierce trade wars. Then the worst happens. Markets shrink and collapse, businesses and industries shut down, and millions of people lose their jobs. Throughout the world, there's a growing realization that the way to prosperity for all nations is rejecting protectionist legislation and promoting fair and free competition. America's jobs and growth are at stake.
So it's important to keep in mind that is the government that put out. That's not a campaign. That's not some interest group. That's not some lobbyist firm. That is the government of Ontario, Canada. The premier there, what's his name? Doug Ford unveiled that 1-minute ad from the government, paid for by the government, which means the taxpayers of Canada. Now, where the problem lies is the entirety of what Reagan said is probably defensible if you're coming from the position of tariffs being set at the onset, right? If you think, well, if there is a free market and then you institute tariffs, all of the things that Reagan warned about probably would happen. And that is why in a totally free, totally reciprocal market, there's not a lot of arguments for additional taxes unless, of course, there's some workers. It's a pretty nuanced situation. But what I think we're getting at here is that what Reagan was saying is that if everything is even, maybe try not to pile on different things because that will then force things to become uneven, unfair, not a good idea for the businesses, the economy, or the consumer as a whole. Having said that, if that were the position that President Trump was in, this video would make sense. However, that's not the position that we're in, because remember, the whole idea with tariffs with Canada, but also around the world, is because they're not reciprocal. It's not fair. And the only reason we're instituting them now, or at least President Trump is instituting them now, is saying we're trying to get back to fairness. And then from there, we can discuss what it's going to look like going forward. I think President Trump would agree that we don't want this trade war to be long-term. That was the premise of what Reagan said. Oh, these don't work long-term. Well, yeah, we agreed. Nobody wants tariffs to be long-term, or at least as I understand it. Now, the most interesting part about this is that they conveniently left out this part of President Reagan's speech, which kind of clarifies what, President Trump is doing in order to actually maneuver something in a way that benefits America that is currently unfair. Also, side note, did you notice that in the first video, they made it sound really scratchy, like an old-timey audio thing? That's pretty clear audio when you watch the entire video. And if you do watch the entire video, you will see this part of that video. Play cut 2.
Well, I've never forgotten those jobs. And on trade issues, by and large, we've done well. In certain select cases, Like the Japanese semiconductors, we've taken steps to stop unfair practices against American products, but we've still maintained our basic long-term commitment to free trade and economic growth.
Wow, I wonder why they would leave that part out of there, because President Reagan says, oh yeah, in this particular situation where things are unfair, yeah, we're using leverage in order to get it back to fairness. I feel like there's somebody currently in the White House that's trying to do the same thing with American imports and exports. Oh, it's exactly what President Trump is trying to do. So, Canada, yeah, maple syrup guzzling Canadians. Yeah, that's the whole point. To misrepresent what President Reagan said and claim that he's like, well, none of this ever makes sense in any context, in any form, in any way, is terribly misleading. The Reagan Foundation actually came out in a statement and said just as much. Let me pull that up for you right now. Glenn, yeah, there we go. There it is. I can't read that on my screen, so I'm pulling it up here. The Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation and the Institute learned of the government of Canada, Ontario, Canada, created a campaign using selective audio from President Reagan delivering his radio address to the nation, free and fair trade, that happened April 25th, 1987. The ad misrepresents the presidential radio address, and the government of Ontario did not seek or receive permission to use and edit the remarks. The Reagan Presidential Foundation and Institute is reviewing its legal options in this matter. And then they encourage you to watch the entire video, which, of course, we did, which is how we come to the context of, yeah, generally speaking, in a totally free, in a totally flat, and a totally fair economy, it's not really a good argument for a ton of tariffs, but that's not what's happening. President Trump has said repeatedly across the globe, we are fighting for reciprocal trade tariffs, and if we don't get those, then we're going to use the leverage that we have, which President Reagan also advocated for in the specific scenario of the Japanese semiconductors that he was talking about. That's what it is that we're doing. That is what President Trump is doing. That's at least what he said he's doing. And I have no reason to doubt him doing so. It's also crazy, too, that the libs are lying about lying. Several media outlets, including the Midas Touch, says the Reagan Library is lying. They're trying to edit the truth, edit history, rewrite the historical remarks of the president. But no, like they literally said, go watch the whole video. See for yourself what he said. And then the folks over at Midas didn't do that and just decided to lie about them lying. The cycle of lying is just it's so hard. It is actually interesting. Jesse Kelly, who was also at the Megyn Kelly event last night, no relation, by the way. I assumed that they were brother and sister. Turns out that's not the case. They just have the same last name. Anyways, Jesse Kelly said, well, they lie. The libs just lie. I know I've said that too, but it's better coming out of his mouth because he's a very smart guy. Why would you not lie? And if you have no moral virtual compass, then you have no reason to not lie. There's no reason that you wouldn't try to push your own narrative, regardless of how true it is. And in this case, it's none. But, such is par for the course for the libs that continue to push their side of quote unquote reality and don't adhere to the same standards. Oh, sorry. I lost my train of thought. Jesse said it's very, very difficult for you and I to put ourselves in that headspace, which is exactly true. It is hard for me to understand the idea of just lying to cover up a lie or lying about something that isn't a lie, calling it a lie. Because, we have this crazy thing called morals and religion and ethics. But yeah, if you don't have that, it's very difficult for a person like me or you to put our heads there and be able to even envision what that would look like.